Hey everyone, welcome back to Take Flight Garage. So, this car is keeping me awake, and I figured I've been super grateful for all of you guys who have reached out in a lot of the videos and extended some support and advice and all the other kind of stuff. And so, since I'm up anyways, this is just going to be kind of a crackhead Porsche video where I'm going to be talking about a lot of the stuff with the Boxster and a couple of 944 things towards the end. Really, the primary thing is just I'm working on a new video, and I really want to see, just kind of gauge what you guys want out of that video. So yeah, we'll get to that. But so for starters, I got a really great comment on the last video of somebody mentioning that I should really probably run the numbers and see if it makes sense financially to keep the car and try to do what I can to figure it out. And in the sense of not putting more than the car is worth into it to repair it. So, and I figure that makes sense. And I figure, I know a lot of other people are probably dealing with this if they have 986s or 996s. So figured let's kind of talk about some stuff and some options that do exist out there. And so depending on your financial situation or where you're at with a car, it might make sense for you to go one of several ways. So for starters, let me walk you through kind of the plan that was sort of in my head for this car, and then we'll break down some of the other options that are out there. And I'll just kind of lay it out there, and you guys can always just let me know in the comments what you think makes sense, what you think doesn't make sense, what would you do if you were in my shoes. A lot of that stuff helps me out because it makes me feel like I'm getting a lot more of a rounded perspective on things, and I can make a decision ultimately that I can feel a little bit better about moving forward. So for starters, here was my plan. And I'll actually kind of walk through a couple things. If I were to move forward with the Boxster, it would I wouldn't only have to financially invest in parts for the car. I would need to buy an engine hoist. I would need to get a stand, which, in the grand scheme of things is not super expensive, but those are costs that are associated with this that I wouldn't go buy otherwise. I don't know if you guys could tell by that last thumbnail that I used, but 2 cars are not going to fit in this garage comfortably. So I would need to get a couple things going to get these bikes out of the way and do another set of cabinets like this on this wall, and then potentially doing boxes like what I am facing right now. You guys have seen the back part of the garage. That would free up that wall space so that I could, if I needed to, park 2 cars in here. I could back the Boxster in on one side and leave it, and at least have the chassis of the car inside. But really, realistically, what I was thinking is I would need to do all of that stuff anyway so that I could have workspaces. This box is good, but it's definitely not enough to tear apart an engine and kind of go through it. Now, I could, and this was the direction that I was planning on heading, I could back the car in the garage, get it lifted as high as I can. I would probably need to get some better jack stands, some jack stands that can go way higher, and do my best to pull that engine, drop it, get it up on a stand, and I could set that off towards one side of the garage as I work on it, take all the time in the world to work on it. The only problem is since I can't fit the actual car in here, I'd probably have to push the car back out, and that way it doesn't interfere, because I do need to use this every day. I got to get in and out. So, and I'm definitely not parking this thing outside with summer coming. So, and especially if this is probably going to take be a years long process is what I'm starting to think. But yeah, so that was kind of my plan. So I think it could be doable, and that's why I made that video saying I physically might be able to do it. And a lot of the stuff, the challenges that I faced before when I was working on my first 944, I overcame those, and I think that could be a viable way for me to overcome at least the physical constraints, right? So that's kind of one thing. The next thing is the money. I'm completely broke right now. I used everything I could that I had in savings that I was using for investing and other stuff that was generating me income. I made the investment into the car with the hopes that I could fix a couple things, get rid of it after a little bit, and pull in a good chunk of money to reinvest or really put towards flight training and all that other kind of stuff. I was really hoping that I might be able to even trade it for like an experimental airplane. So that was kind of my plan with the car. That did not work out. So I'm at a point now where I'm doing the best that I can to save scraps, but everything that prices are going up and everything just kind of sucks. Gas has shot back up to what it like $4.30 a gallon here. So, and even just filling up the 944 is kind of killing me. Especially now that I'm using it exponentially more than I was over the past week. But yeah, so that by itself is a whole different story, and that kind of dives more personally, but just that's what is really tough is it's going to be a while before I can even have the funds to get the car properly diagnosed, which is the first step that would need to happen. So before any of this other stuff happens, the car obviously needs to go to Porsche Chandler and get a real opinion on it, a professional opinion, because I've reached the limit of my diagnostic ability, and kind of get their feedback and hear what they say. I mean, for all I know, it could just be a stuck lifter. Even if it is something like that, it does require the engine kind of coming out. So a lot of things to consider, but that was sort of my main path. Now, one thing that I could think to do to maybe generate some income would be to launch some shirt designs, maybe try to start up TFG as a brand. I've had large ambitions for what I want Take Flight Garage to become in the future after I kind of figured out my professional lifestyle. And I haven't really talked about any of that stuff because I didn't really want to hatch any eggs before they leave the basket, if that makes any sense. It's a horrible analogy. I'm tired, but you kind of get what I'm saying. I didn't want to talk about all this stuff and say, hey, I have all this stuff in the works, and then not really have any of the groundwork coming. So I could launch some t-shirt designs. I have some ideas. I'm not a graphic designer or an artist, but I do have a couple of cool ideas for clothing and merch and stuff like that. And that could be one potential way to kind of generate some income going, to be able to fix the car and reinvest that back into the channel, try to continue to the growth. Because like I said before, these videos aren't monetized right now. And even if they were, they just wouldn't be bringing in any money at all. So I'm trying to figure all of this stuff out as I go, on top of trying to balance school and try to figure out that whole thing. So there's kind of a lot of things that are floating around in the air. So yeah, the financial aspect is just, if I keep the car, I can't do anything to it for a while. I need to build up some savings. And on top of that, like I've been saying in a few other videos, this thing is due for a timing belt this year, and that alone is going to probably be around $1,500 in parts. And so that's now one other expense that's floating in the back of my mind without having any real income coming in sufficiently to balance all this stuff out. And that needs to be a priority because now this is back to being my only car. So yeah, that's financially the situation that I'm personally in, and all that other kind of stuff. But these are just some of the things that have been floating around in my head for the past week. And again, this is all still assuming that this is a catastrophic engine failure and the car can't be saved. Until there's a real diagnosis for that, I don't really feel confident or comfortable claiming that anymore. I think I jumped the gun a little bit too much, but that's neither here nor there. So with all of this context out there, we can now go through the 3 paths that are available to me. I could probably within a couple weeks I now have the title, the physical title in hand. I have everything I need to call up a company to pick up the car and get some of my money back, take a significant loss, but some of my money back. It's in my pocket, and I don't have to think about any of this stuff, and I can just kind of go back sort of to how things were before I bought the car. I think I've made myself clear in the last video why I don't want to do that, but I feel as though that's the most logical thing to do and the safest thing. It's for sure the safest thing to do right now because it's guaranteed and it involves not investing any more money into the car. Option number 2, I'll take the car to the dealer, schedule a diagnostic that would probably be around maybe $500 to $700, I imagine, just to sort of kind of get an idea of what might be wrong with it. Bring the car back, save up some money, do a couple of changes in the garage, like I said, pull the engine, put it up on a stand and leave it there and get to it when I get to it. Disassembly and stuff I could do because that doesn't cost me any money, but as far as ordering parts and all that sort of stuff. Now, the one big risk with that is I can get that far into the rebuild or into the teardown process and discover that the engine is not salvageable. There's a cracked head, or a cracked block, I should say. A cracked head wouldn't be the end of the world, but there's a cracked block, or the bores are just gone. There's no way to save them. So yeah, engine's toast, right? That's worst case scenario. Let alone like rebuild costs. So I believe a rebuild for just the parts alone, gaskets, seals, not necessarily including rod bearings, machine work, etc. I've seen kits out there for about $3,500. So that's $3,500 if I can just save the engine and throw it back together. I have seen other engines. There's a couple for sale right now for around, I think there's one for $2,000 and then there's another one for $2,800. And that would just be buying the engine, getting it here, dropping it in the car. So on top of the other expenses of still having to kind of fix up the garage. So the nice thing about that, the positives about that are I could have a running engine back in the car without having to do any kind of disassembly, machine work. It would be a faster process and it's less expensive even than just buying the parts for a rebuild. Now the potential risk is that those engines could fail in the same way. Now, what I could do is put one of those engines in the car and then immediately sell it, as a running car, but I'm already experiencing people not wanting to buy the car for what I have it listed now, and I just don't think it's gonna make sense, and I don't think anyone is really gonna bite on something like that, especially if those engines aren't gone through and there aren't things to kind of reassure everyone. So now the way to circumvent that would be to purchase one of those used engines, especially if it's like known, tested, compression tested, good, scoped, all that other kind of stuff, and then do a bunch of upgrades to it. You know, doing like the IMS solution, doing the LN engineering stuff as far as like, you know, the deeper oil pan, the metal baffle, the oil screen, all that other kind of stuff, just kind of going crazy with it, right? That would probably be the best solution if I was going to keep the car, because not only would I know what I have and the history of the engine and verified proof that it's healthy, but then I would also have the reassurance and the confidence of how it was rebuilt and that it was built back up to a more reliable standard. However, that route would then probably be around another $4,000 or $5,000 in parts on top of purchasing an engine, so that's about $6,000. There are companies that I've seen. There's one specific company in the UK that does engine rebuilds on these cars specifically, the 986 and the 986 and 996, 997s. I've seen their rebuilds start at about 2,500 pounds, British pounds, but so that's probably what's going to be around 3,000 US dollars. But again, that doesn't include me having to pull the engine out and then ship it over there, wait for it to be rebuilt. Who knows how long their waiting list is, their wait times. Prices are varying right now with taxes and politics and all that other kind of stuff. So it's not really a guaranteed cost. And it could potentially jump higher, again, if they pull the engine apart and find that, you know, there's like irreparable damage. So it's kind of a risk to do that. But it is an option that exists, especially if you're local out there. And if you have the money and you don't mind, then those guys, from what I hear, are probably the best solution to go with because of how they rebuild the engines to make them way more reliable and kind of fix a lot of the issues that the M96s and the M97s had. So you get your engine back, and the value is knowing that it's going to be robust. Doing a straight up engine rebuild through a shop, through, for example, like a dealer, doing a full-on engine restoration, again, you're talking like $20,000 or $30,000. So we already know that that's definitely off the table for me. So those are kind of the ideas. Those are the pathways that are out there. I'm kind of kicking it around. The only thing that is tough for me to process is if I don't get rid of the car, it's still my car, you know? I don't have to worry about buying another one. Obviously, whatever I get for that using a junk service is not going to cover replacing it. It's not even going to cover replacing like that car with a different car. And it's probably not going to really do me any favors in the long run with the 944. So I would just kind of have to go back into investing and trying to grow that money. But if I get rid of that car, then I get rid of the car. I don't have the car anymore. So as long as it's mine, I feel like I have time to kind of sit on it and think and wait or whatever. But again, it's not like it's being stored inside, it's being stored outside. So the other thing that I really wanted to do that I thought would have been awesome is I've dabbled in it before. I've talked about doing like aviation related content, all that other kind of stuff. And I have plans for this channel in the future going forward with that. I would have loved if I could have like rented a hangar, especially at my local airport that's just down the street from me. If I could have rented a hangar, put the car in there, been able to do a rebuild series in that hangar, launch Take Flight Garage, do like a merch setup, have a place to store merch, and then potentially in the future do like video lessons for flight instructing, or, you know, do like a whole aviation themed channel, whatever else. That potentially would have been awesome, because then I could have kept the car there indefinitely and it would have mattered. The thing is that due to FAA regulations, you can't really just rent a hangar and then do whatever you want with it. If you're gonna, especially if you're gonna run a business out of it, it has to be aviation related first and foremost. You have to do something related to aviation. Otherwise, it's a federal offense. So I don't know if the feds would be okay with me just shooting YouTube videos about flying or you know, just aviation content in general. I don't know if that would work. I would rather not find out. I don't have lawyers, and I definitely can't afford lawyers to kind of bail me out if I got in trouble for that. So that would have been like the dream setup, would have been have like a hangar set up and go through building the Boxster engine or whatever, and then apply that towards doing like an experimental airplane, talking about airplane systems, aviation systems, flight training, schools, all that other kind of stuff. And yeah, I think that would have been fun. Like that would have been kind of almost like an exciting prospect, you know. It still would have been a pain in the butt, but at least some doors kind of could have opened from that, you know. So if any of you guys out there have any advice on that or tips, maybe we can figure that out. But yeah, that's kind of everything that's going on with the Boxster stuff. So real quick, I wanted to talk to you guys about the latest video that I was working on for the 944. I was finally putting together footage of like B-roll and stuff of using the double din that I installed in the car. And as I was going through and kind of thinking about what to do for the voiceover for that video, kind of got me thinking, do you guys want me to review like the quality of the head unit, the specific one that I used? Or would you rather me kind of do like a broad overview of maybe sharing my opinion on why installing that type of head unit into an older classic car might make sense, and you know, just some of the usability and features that help you out during your driving experience, etc. Would you rather me focus on like the user experience or the features of that specific head unit, the sound quality and stuff like that? So let me know what you want out of that video, and I'll be sure to do my best to tailor and give the most unbiased and level-headed review, so to speak, of that I can of that whole experience and stuff like that. Personally, I've loved it, and it's been a great help, especially like driving out in the canyons and doing locations and directions and all that stuff. It's already definitely paid for itself, in my opinion, with the usability of having like maps and all that kind of stuff built in. But yeah, if I keep the car, there could be a whole series of like garage renovation and pulling the engine and rebuilding it and learning and going through this whole process. But it's going to cost a ton of money that I don't have. But there, you know, we could try to do some things to get some money coming in, whether it's a t-shirt launch or stickers or merch or whatever it is. I have no idea. I've never really ran a business before. I've always wanted to start like a flight school. I've always envisioned that Take Flight Garage would evolve into that, and you know, having like an actual space to start a business and work on the cars freely would be really rad. It'd be cool. And be able to be in a place where financially I don't need money, because I don't want to do memberships. I don't want to do a Patreon. Like, if you guys are if I'm gonna ask for patronage of this channel and the content that I make, then I want whatever you guys get for your money to be worth it. Like, I want you to get a physical product in hand. So yeah, that's kind of where all that stuff is. I appreciate you for letting me ramble for these past 20 minutes. Let me know what you think, what you would do if you were in my shoes, what kind of makes the most sense. Would you be upset if would you understood if I cut my losses here and just kind of went back to things as normal, or should we just kind of press on, and should I just keep the car until I can figure something out to get it going again? So thanks for watching, you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.